I'm AJ Bianco, host of Reflect Ed, a part of the Education Podcast Network. Just like the show you're listening to now, shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Well, hello there, folks. We are live with the High Tech Podcast. Actually recorded, but we will be.
Yeah.
No, we are live right now. We will be recorded.
We're kind of the opposite of live. Like, it's literally the opposite definition. Recorded at a different time and then released
We are
separately.
yet to be recorded while being recorded. The process is
That wasn't
in
confusing
process. Yes. This is Department of Redundancy Department this evening. This is your one host, William Millingworth, with your co-host, Joshua Swartz. You there with me?
at all. Hello. Yep. There's two of us.
He's
Not just one.
here.
Yep. There's me.
Episode 101. We're here in
Whew.
season 4. It's like we're doing it, dude.
Yeah. We say that a lot. Like, I don't know, Yeah, we're doing it, We just came off of Extravacanva,
That's true. Yes.
I even got the name right this time. I feel like I messed it up a lot.
I'm the one that wasn't on board for the longest time,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
you won that one, and you and Renee and others won that one by encouraging Extravacanva.
Yeah, it's it was a good name. But now we're past that. We're on episode 101.
Boom.
We are on to the next topic.
And we're in season 4. Like, nothing's happened, nothing's changed. We're just going. We've got it.
Yeah.
It's smooth.
We're just doing our thing.
Working. And now, as easy of a intro as that is, it's barely like, I don't know, morbid enough for the topic.
Yeah,
Like,
if
I
we were
feel
really
like we're
thinking through
smiling
this,
too
we could have
much.
had like a spider or like something, like I was thinking Halloween. I realized
Okay,
that my logic was not connecting.
You wanted a Black Widow to kill you?
Yeah, I guess I don't know where I was going with that. Hold on, I got an idea. Okay, here we go. We're introing. We're talking about our episode. It's gonna be great.
Listener, he's looking down. He's doing something.
I'm looking down. I'm
There's-
doing under the pressure of trying to do this quickly. I'm not entirely sure.
You're fat thumbing it over there. He's probably looking at something on his phone. He wants to get a sound effect.
Hold on. It's gonna be no, it's not gonna be a sound effect. It's gonna be I'm gonna turn down the lights. Yeah.
He's doing some visual effects, VFX for those in the know.
Yeah, it's getting very dark.
Where's
dark
the,
because
red light.
We're here talking. Okay, see, now you're challenging me to do a different light color. Actually, I'm not going to do that because my RGB does not do red well. Just a fun fact. If you're not, there you go. You got red. Okay, hold on. Dang it! Now I feel like I need to at least try. Does that look red? That looks red, right? You get a vibe?
If red were orange, yes.
Okay, yeah. See, that's the problem. My RGB doesn't do... Are you using Wise Lights in your office?
Absolutely.
Sorry, listener. Hold on. We're having a discussion.
Absolutely. I have Wise Lights in my office.
Then why does yours do red? Mine doesn't do red. Mine hates me.
Who knows?
I don't know. I'm going to keep it a blue. It's fine.
I'm actually enjoying this. Like, I'm just like
the little dark vibe.
We should have done this before we recorded the episode, but here we are. We're live.
Yeah, we weren't thinking.
We're live to be recorded. That's fine.
Although I don't know if you realize that we unintentionally matched our shirts with our lights now.
And there's some more red, so I'm just red on red up in here. Yeah. No, that's great.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'm the dark side, and you're the light side. You went blue. I went red.
Oh, it is. Well, not when this episode releases, but when we're recording, because we're not doing
Star
it
Wars
live,
week.
The opposite definition, it is Star Wars week in Will and I's life at this moment, which is an important time. Anyway, all of this was an extended way of introing and being unplanned in the High Tech Podcast of getting us to a morbid topic. Is higher ed dying?
Dun dun dun.
That was
and I almost wish we had thought to do something like Clue, like who killed higher ed? Was it
who killed higher ed?
Was it Dr. Violet in the laboratory with a telescope?
I like how you picked the one professor. Like you were like, I'm gonna pick the one educator in Clue.
I don't know if that's a real character. I made that up.
It is. Isn't there a Dr. Violet or Purple or something? Or is that?
I don't know.
I don't know Clue. All I know is Colonel Mustard. Anyway, listen, the High Tech Podcast, we talk about a varying of things. Well, we like to talk a lot. I think our topics kind of lean more towards tech and whoa, got really bright on your screen. Tech and like instructional design, UX, that type of stuff tends to be our topics. There's a lot of articles. I don't know about you, Will, but like there's a ton of articles dropping around about like the future of higher education. If you're new to this game or you're listening to our podcast and you teach in K-12, which even if you teach in K-12, you should be seeing this if you're on Twitter. Like there's a lot of discussion about higher ed. Higher ed's going through hard times right now. A lot of enrollments are down at institutions. And I think there's understandably a lot of conversation about what does the future of higher ed look like? Wow, you just got even more red. And in my defense, you also kind of look orange on my screen. So
it's fine.
It's fine. There you go. Anyway, there's a lot of conversation about this. Is higher ed dying? What's the future of higher ed? If I get one more post or email from somebody at a higher level position at an institution about their hot take on the future of higher ed, my head might explode.
AI gonna kill higher ed?
Yes.
Is the economy gonna kill it?
Yes.
Is
there seems to be a lot of potential murderers sitting around for higher ed?
Why is higher ed this weak little baby that's just ready to die?
Yeah, and also why are we not putting these things in prison? I'm just throwing this out there. If we think AI is going to kill higher ed, we'll talk about that later during the season. Will and I are planning a big AI conversation. Trust me, we haven't forgotten about it. And it hasn't forgotten about us. I'm pretty sure it's also doing its own version of a podcast. Anyway, there's a lot of things supposedly killing higher ed. And I wanted to, we were actually going to talk about something different on this episode, but we decided to talk about this because I just think there's a lot of conversation going around it. And I'm curious, Will, you and I have conversations about this, but we've never really talked about it on the podcast. Like, what are our perspectives and views on this?
I do want to do a little bit of storytelling, a little bit of history for just me, my experience, right? And put that out there. I think there's plenty of folks that'll kind of resonate, but
high-tech history right here.
High-tech history. Even better than high-tech hijinks. I like that. Yeah. I was raised in a family that expected and told me, like, go to college. It's a good thing. My father was always open. He worked in trades. He was a contractor all of his life. He was a very didn't want to work for anybody kind of guy. He was always open to the fact that I could go be a plumber, go be a welder. Mm-hmm. Like he said, William, that's an option. But if you don't do that, you need to go to college. So the expectation was set there. I remember literally, I know that it's the crux of my professional career that I got out of college and I thought to myself while walking around campus, like the day of or after graduation, what the heck did I just do? What did I just spend all of that money on? Right. And it stunned me that I wasn't, I had a job lined up, but I wasn't like out in the market. I wasn't hearing anything from anyone else. I was just stuck there with like, can I remember anything I just spent 3 years studying? Do I have something tangible that's going to help me in my professional career? Because I also got a job that wasn't in my bachelor's degree study. I wasn't going to go and teach English as a second language. I was going to end up in the Office of Online Education. Very different, similar, but very different. And so like that being a starting point for me, like I've wrestled with the value of higher education since I graduated from undergrad. And then I went and did a master's degree, and I was so against the expense that I found a way to have my institution pay for it and go through a tuition reimbursement plan, all that kind of stuff, because I knew it wasn't worth me paying for it. I knew it might be good for me, but I wasn't willing to spend the dollars. So just at a monetary level, my entire experience with undergrad higher education is all about cost. Like it's too expensive. It's not worth this. I need to do this in a cheaper way. And if it's not worth the value, then what the heck are we doing with it? Right? If people are ending up with 20, 30, 40 $100,000 worth of debt coming out of this stuff. What's the return on investment? A good friend of ours, I'm not going to name him for this because he doesn't have my permission, but we both know him. He's a friend of the podcast. Just got his student loans forgiven after participating in the National Student Loan Forgiveness Plan, where you have to work in a nonprofit or education context for X amount of years and make 120 consecutive payments on your loans, and then the remainder will be forgiven, right? Like, if we have to think like I do and work like he did to make our college degrees worth it, to me, economically, higher ed is dead. We are spending way too much money to pontificate and not get, in many cases, not get very practical skills. To me, and I'll raise my hands up, listeners, so that I cast this awesome, weird, shadow in the background of a gripping hand squeezing something dead. Like, I think higher ed's dead. That's my take. Because of all that and more, I think higher ed is dead.
Okay. Well, there we go. That's the answer. We're done. Move on the podcast.
That's a wrap. Okay, on to episode 102.
We're on 102. Look at us solving problems quickly. Yeah, so like Will and I's perspectives are different on this. This is why I want to talk about this a little bit, because Will and I tend to agree on a lot of things, or we inadvertently agree. We didn't realize we agreed. Like, we planned. There was one episode, I forget what it was. You and I planned to be more divergent, right. And we ended up just agreeing. I don't remember what it was. We didn't talk about it ahead of time.
Yeah.
But this is where I do disagree a little bit. Now I will be up front. The way I worded this question is higher ed dying. Not is it dead yet, but is it dying? Like, is higher ed?
You just watched me kill it with my hand.
Is higher ed the knight from Monty Python and the Holy Grail? Like, its arms are cut off, but it's not dead yet. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm not dead yet.
I'm not dead yet. That's not even the knight. That's the guy that they're like carrying around or whatever. I don't even know. Anyway.
Never mind.
Yeah, he's in the death cart or whatever it is. You know, like, I watched that movie a lot. I had a friend in high school, side note, who memorized the entire script to that movie, mainly because his iPod screen broke. I'm dating myself, but his iPod screen broke, and the only thing he could scroll to was the recording from the Monty Python the Holy Grail movie. So like he used to listen to that on repeat. Anyway, is it dying? So my perspective is, now I will say this, Will, I agree with you on the money thing. We've been talking about this for a long time. Higher ed's been talking about this for a long time. This isn't a new conversation. Yeah. I think it is getting ridiculous, the amount of money that we have to spend on higher ed. Now, I think it's a two-way street. I'll just be blunt. I think like specifically, Will, your and I's generation, and definitely like under us, like to complain a lot about the price of higher ed. Sure. We were also the people who like expected institutions to have giant polls. I didn't, but in large, you. Right?
I hear you. Yeah,
there's a bigger expectation for what higher ed's supposed to have, right? Part of the expenditure of pricing in higher ed is ridiculous services that we have placed in higher ed, like things like the big institutions with rock walls and the expanding amount of staff and personnel that we have to have in higher ed. This is me speaking as somebody who is a staff member in higher ed. Like, there's a reason these expenditures have jumped up. It's not because people in higher ed just want a lot of money. It's because there's a lot of people they're paying to do things. That doesn't change the fact that I still think it's a problem. Like, should students be paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for degrees that they may not fully use when they leave? Like, let's be honest, Will, we've talked about this a lot. And my story is different. I went to higher ed. I left higher ed before I'd even graduated. I already had a job in the field that my degree was in. Yeah. And I was using what I had learned and unlearning some of the things I had learned from the bad professors and doing the job that I was doing. Then I transitioned, as we've talked about on this podcast before. I transitioned out of church ministry and I transitioned into higher ed, taking the job Will used to have that was now the Office of Digital Learning. And have now since then moved up in that office, and I'm in a different position in what I'm doing now and leading a team there. I still use some of what I learned in higher ed because I'm naturally in a the institution that I came from. And
Right,
so
right.
some of what I learned in undergrad and in my master's degree program, then eventually I'm using to a certain extent in there. But I'm not using all of it. Like, you and I both ended up in positions that we didn't go to school for. And that's common. Like, it's not uncommon that happens, mainly because
Right.
when we're in education, we don't know what we want to do. Like, we came out of high school, most of us.
Right.
I spent a
Right.
few years in a band beforehand. That's why I think my journey was also a little bit different. I had a little bit more of an idea of what I wanted to do because
Yeah.
I'd spent several years doing other things after high school. I didn't go right into college, even though my dad would have liked me to go right into college. I instead grew out my hair and played on tour for several years.
You did it. You did the perfect rebellion.
I did that. Well, that wasn't the perfect rebellion. We didn't really like drink and party as a band.
That's fair. That's fair.
You know, we just
That's
played
good.
music.
Good for you, my friend.
We were, that was us, anyway, and we were a little nerdy. But anyway, pop punk's coming back, so it doesn't matter. Anyway, so my journey's a little bit different. That said, I do think, here's my perspective on the question of, is higher ed dying or not? I don't know if it's necessarily dying, but higher ed level education needs to rethink what we're doing.
Right.
I think we've created a system that's been around for how long? I don't even know at this point, that we've had. Do you remember how long the higher ed system is really? I mean, we know it dates back to a lot of times, like even Princeton and stuff being started as like seminary type of stuff. And even some of our models go back to some of what was happening over in like Europe originally.
Princeton
but-
is 1746. Oxford is likely established in 1096.
Now the Oxford model back in 1096 was probably very different than what's happening right now.
No, I think that they were probably using iPads and everything.
Probably, yeah. Well,
like-
they probably had advisors or student success coaches, whatever the heck we call them now.
Success
Or personnel or experts or
Yep.
Jedis, whatever we call them at this point.
I prefer Sith.
Yes, I prefer Sith. Well, some might be. Anyway, we've been using the same model for a while, and I do think there's a change that needs to happen. I think higher ed, as we know, does need to die a little bit at this point. And do I think AI is going to kill it? I'm going to be honest, people. I don't.
No.
I think
it's going to change it. But
it's going to change it, but AI is going to change a lot of things. Now, some good, some bad, depending on. We'll talk about our AI series coming up in a little bit this season, but I don't think that's necessarily going to be the killing point. I think the killing point is this. Like you have talked about, we were talking about beforehand, Will. There's more of a transition coming to the fact where people care more about, like, can you do the job? Do you have the skills to do what you need to do? Do you have emotional intelligence to interact with people? Can you think critically? And those are all things that I think higher ed can develop. Like one of the pushbacks I do have towards some of the stuff that we talk about around this area is this conversation of like viewing higher ed as just a skills-based thing for jobs. I do think there's a lot of value to the humanities and things where we learn how to critically think, we learn how to process information, we learn how to innovate through not just learning hard skills for jobs, but learning how to think. And I understand that's a luxury to a certain extent.
Well, unfortunately, these days, more and more a luxury than a commodity. That ties together a couple of the things you and I have said. Like, I have some issues with the cost. You're pointing the pools and the rock climbing walls and some other stuff that have like inflated the cost, right? I was doing some basic Googling research in the 60s when my dad would have been in college. Tuition was like maybe $2,000, $2,500 a year. You're talking about, that's just ridiculous. But like everything's inflated, right? Everything's more expensive from that time. But I think if you went, pennies to pennies, it probably would be that there's a lot more things being spent money on in college today than there was when my dad was in college, for instance. But the point of like these skills and the pools and the rock climbing walls in the first place, like I believe that there's a lot of things we've built into education because maybe they were a part of primary school, higher high school, that kind of thing, and they kind of came up with the students. But like, if you want to be a professional baseball player in the United States of America, you go to college you play at college level, you get a scholarship, you try and keep your GPA above a 1.5. And, there's this way, like, if you want to be a baseball player in the Dominican Republic, you play baseball. If you want to be a football player, a soccer player in Brazil, you play soccer, right? Like, I think that that's okay, and that's a good thing. I kind of think the international world has a better use of sports and sportsmanship for professional careers than the US does. Like, I do not believe us keeping these students in college on their scholarships to become baseball players, NFL players, NBA players, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Is meshing with what you're saying. I love the humanities. I love training to think. I like thinking to train. I like what we had in that episode with Nick at ArgueFlow, how Nick's saying, like, I want people to be able to argue and think critically through these things, right? That is, to me, the playground of higher education. And it's kind of the White Tower-ish approach to, like, why academia is the smart people. I don't like that term. Like, it's not, academia shouldn't be the smart people. It's the academically inclined people, right? I can't jump 7 feet in the air and catch a baseball going at 150 miles an hour before it goes out of the stands for a home run, right? Like, I'm not that person. And so why should that person be in the same class with me if that person doesn't want to be in the class? There's tons of things like that where, like, just at that alone, United States of America, needs to be better at supporting sports as its own career, much like the international world treats hospitality. The US is actually catching up on hospitality as a career and as like degrees and stuff like that, right? But, like,
there's more degrees in that area now.
We get so many folks in the international world coming to America to work in our hotels, because it's a study. It's a field of study in many countries.
Yeah.
It's an export. They actually sends people out of countries to go and work in hospitality. So, like, in my opinion, what higher education is today does need to die, should be dead, because it's so inflated with money issues and mixed goals and scope creep. Like, it's not about learning. I think there's things like engineering and some of the trades that probably still don't really need to even be in higher education, just like the others, because there should be an engineering school. And that's kind of how they started. The universities were in the days. Before this, anyways, right?
You and I talked
just
about
had a
this before.
school of engineering.
Yeah, there was a trade system, like, and that is something I know you and I have talked about, where, like, the apprenticeship and trade system idea is something we've lost in our country. I think specifically in our area, but just in higher ed in general as a primary, and, like, reconceiving of that. Like, there's skill-based things that we now do degrees for, but we know at the end of the day, all the learning science says also doing it at the same time is important. Like, that people learn better when they have that practical experience going around with it. But we put people in a distilled classroom for maybe 3 years before they actually start doing internships or things like that. And then they start going out and doing some things. And I get to a certain extent, like, there's ways we have to level that. There's medical school. Like, some of the stuff that Will and I are talking about, I don't think is all targeted towards all of higher ed. That's also part of the problem. Higher ed is complex. Like, we have stuff like medical schools and things like that. You and I have talked about this before. There's also a part of the reason, while it's super expensive, and I think there's a change to it, there's also a payoff in a lot of times with medical school, because the payment side at the end for that position tends to be higher to be able to pay off those bills. But also, we've talked about where, like, you can't just throw somebody into an apprenticeship doing surgical stuff on day one on a human. Like, there's a lot of pre-learning and things like that. I understand all that. We're not necessarily saying that. I think part of the issue is that we're realizing that with the dawn of the internet and more startup type institutions and programs for learning that are more focused, like, we're seeing more of this start to happen, like, kind of startup institutions, as I kind of classify them, being a focused thing, like, on teaching people engineering or teaching people this skill or whatever that may be, or this job pathway. People, because of the expense and time and energy, people want a more focused pathway to the thing they want to get to. Right. Or in smaller bites, so that somebody who later on, like, we were talking about this in the Accelerated series with a buddy of ours, Alex, like, later on realizing, I want to know how to code to get jobs in that area. Like,
Right.
I don't want to waste a whole bunch of time on a 4-year degree. I want to get these and we're seeing some of that happen in the tech space, like boot camps and things like that.
Yep.
I think that's starting to make people realize, like, couldn't we be doing that more in other places, like more focused places, and letting the students choose what they would like to do and having some more flexibility in the development of pace and things like that. I think we're starting to get a lot of that because we're seeing it in professional development spaces. We're seeing it. And this is why I think in higher ed, they have a lot of conversations about, I want to do more micro-credentialing or all those things, because we're seeing that over in the area. And in higher ed's classic way, we oversimplify the solution and we go, well, they're doing that over there in professional development and people like micro-credentials. Let's do that. That must be the solution to all our problems. I don't know. Is that making sense? Kind of what I'm referencing there. I feel like it's, I feel like some of the dawn of internet, digital, and kind of like high flex education is starting to get people to realize that there's maybe cheaper ways we can do this without all the extreme overhead of higher ed.
That, and I think like you've got big successes like Ninja, Tyler Blevins, who became the top video game streamer in the world, without a I don't know if he finished high school. He dropped out of college. Like, he did not do it. He paved a path. He created an industry that didn't previously exist. And good for him. I mean, that's the cycle, the hallmark of industry, right? Henry Ford didn't have an assembly line, so he made the assembly line, and so now everybody uses the assembly line. But like, I met somebody recently in my co-working facility. He's got to be barely 19. He started doing what's called drop shipping. I wasn't aware of what the heck this was, right? But he started doing this in the 10th grade. It's where you buy a bunch of bulk stuff from somewhere else and you sell it through a third party and you run the customer service. Like, your service, your what you're being paid to do is being the service to the customer. So Amazon might be the one actually selling your materials that you've bought from Alibaba or whatever, but you're the one that talks to the customer and takes their return if something goes wrong. He's 18 or 19, running his own business. He finished high school maybe, and that's it. He will never go to college. He has become a successful business person at 18 or 19 years old. Yeah. These kinds of things with the internet weren't possible in the 1990s. They were barely possible in the 2000s. And so now there's more and more, I think, democratization of entrepreneurship, right? There used to be kind of a become your own like business person by starting up a contracting company, patenting or making the better spring or a new door hinge, right? Like something physical. Now, like, anyone can make anything a career. Make something that takes on Photoshop, make something that competes with Canva, make the next AI bot. And you don't need degrees to do any of that stuff. It's all something you just have to learn. There are degrees that help you get there, but like the threshold isn't there with college degree being required to get into that stuff.
Yeah, I would agree with that to a certain extent. My only pushback there would be, I'm not sure that's a new thing that's changing things, because to your point, that's always existed. Like, that pathway, like, we've been hearing that since I was in high school. Like, the second Steve Jobs created Apple, it was like there was this whole thing about like, well, see, mom and dad, all these successful people created this company without being in college. And like, that's a reality. I think there was a stigma for a while that you needed college to be successful, but that's never been the case. I would argue, since even before college existed, that's not been the case. Like, you don't need college to be successful.
At the same time, though, there's become a lot more colleges and a lot more universities. Like, that, the desire for them's grown, and so they've tried to fill the gap and provide a product that I think is overinflated. I think we have too many colleges. We have too much higher education.
I mean, that's definitely a thing. I would not disagree with that, coming from the two of us who live in a state that probably has the most colleges out of half the states here. Like, that's not something I disagree with at all. I think we do. I think the complexity of what's happening in higher ed is more than just some of the stuff Will and I are mentioning. There's a lot of factors going on of what there is. I think a big part of it is rising costs and just not the payoff. Like, at the end of the day, if we're being honest, that's what's happening right now. I think people are seeing, I've got to spend how much money to go to this college and then pay off all these loans. And there's starting to be, I think the key point here is actually, I would argue it's not that it's easier now to be an entrepreneur, quote unquote. I think it's just easier to get experiences other ways into a job or startup or whatever it may be to get money in those spaces, because we have the internet that's provided a lot of resources for learning things like skills that you just, if you have them, you'll get hired in those areas.
Before the internet, you had to go somewhere and meet someone or read a book. Maybe you read a book.
I mean, you could read.
You had to go apprentice somewhere. You had to go join a construction crew. You had to go and knock on a door. Like, there was a physical requirement to learning something. Now anyone can learn something from home from the internet, and that is I think, to me, the difference, the accelerator, where business can boom. Post 2000. And I know the internet predates 2000, right? But like in the 21st century here, we have seen crypto become a thing, and like, who could imagine crypto in 2000? No one.
Well, we may not imagine it in the future anyway, depending on whether it fully crashes or not. We have good and bad ideas in this world.
But like, and now I also see like tools that are cropping up around business, around budding career people, right? Like Outlier, Straighter Line, Klepping, right? These are products that help folks get through college quicker. So these are companies who realize, like, hey, the time issue is a thing. If we can get people to the degree sooner and we can get their money in the process, they're going to be happier, and the colleges will still get degrees out. I really enjoying like a tool called otta.com, OTTA. I've recommended it to a lot of folks who are like job hunting. It's one of those things. It's one of those tools that'll actually do a little bit of searching and questioning and surveying of you, the person looking for a job. What do you offer? What are you interested in? What careers, money, and all this? And then it curates jobs that could fit you. So you could put in there that you don't have a degree, and it will find you the jobs that do not require degrees. Like, the tools exist now for anyone to get a job, whether you have the degree or not. And I know companies like Guild Education that, I mean, I don't know 100%, but like they have a statement that like degrees are not their threshold. And the job postings I've seen, I've not seen one job posting from their company that requires a single degree. All of it is 2 years of experience doing something, 7 years of experience doing something, 5 years experience in the field, right? And that, I think, is a telling example. Like, if businesses stop wholesale or even organically, just a few at a time over time, businesses stop requiring the degree, higher education's dead. Like, there'll just be the folks who want to get a PhD in humanities, and that will be, and like medical doctors, please continue getting degrees. I appreciate that. Medical doctors, research scientists, that's fine. Those are fields.
Yeah, there's still some fields. I mean, I think that's why you're seeing STEM and like medical based stuff growing in higher ed, because that's the area where that's not going away. And I'm not sure it's going to, even if higher ed transforms and changes, that area, I'm not sure it's going to transform and change too much right now, just because we're not seeing that tension happening there right now as much. And there's a solid argument for the amount of time and effort it goes through to get into those fields. Like, that's, I think, and the payoff is different. Like, the reason you're not seeing it is the payoff is different. At the end of the day, like, I know people have tons of medical loans. They don't enjoy paying them off, but I'll be honest, my friends, and I think you would agree, who tend to be in those fields for the most part, are making more than I am. Like, and so that's,
hey, I remember my dentist at one point telling me he had to take out $400,000 in loans just to buy one machine.
Yeah.
I get that. I mean, it's a crazy expensive industry and stuff like that. And that's just the dentists, right? You're not talking like, brain surgeons and stuff. But yeah, I think the salaries need to be commensurate for that kind of stuff. It's appropriate, but
no, it's appropriate. I think. Anyway, I don't see a problem with that direction. I just think that's probably why you're not going to see as much of a change. I don't know. This is it's a complex thing. I don't think we really had a hot take on it. I will say this. I do think, just in general, the organization that we see as higher ed, I don't know if dying is probably our grab title term. I think it's changing / dying. Sometimes death is a transformation into something else.
That's fair.
I think we're
That's fair.
finding more results in people trying to figure out how do we take some of the, because I always still hear, I mean, you've heard this argument before too, Will, where it's like, I don't need higher ed, I have YouTube. Those, I laugh at those a little bit too, because I'm like, that's cool. You can't learn literally everything on YouTube. There's
You can learn a little bit of it a lot, but you can't learn everything.
There's a point to guided learning and learning experiences.
Yeah,
I think
the
there's a
instructor
value
is
to
still
all of that.
valuable.
The instructor's still valuable. The design is still valuable. I think what's happening is we're seeing more and more places and things start to pop up with, we need to get more innovative in the way we use technology to provide those learning experiences to people that are more affordable and usable for them. And the reality of that is I think you're going to see higher ed change or probably die off purely because maybe some people in higher ed wouldn't like me saying this, but I honestly think part of it is accreditation needs to die. I'm just going to be blunt. Like we're going to do something later in the season where Will and I are going to talk a little bit about our dream. If we could save higher ed and change it. One of the things I get very frustrated with, and I think is part of the reason higher ed is so stuck sometimes, is accreditation requires them to do so much. Like students who come in, I laugh because I was this way too, coming in, they take programs and they go like, this is, why can't I just take these courses with this focus? And I want to go, that's partially because we're required to make you take so many credits. Like
right.
Your degree is required to have so many contact hours and credits. And like, that's not something that's just debatable with accreditation. Like we're required to do. Now, the way that looks differs from institution to institution, but I've been convinced that red tape is stopping the innovation from happening in higher ed that needs to happen. And I think that's why you're going to start to see people move away from that, because at the end of the day, a lot of this, you were saying, Will, and I agree with you, a lot of applications, a lot of things, they're changing their perspective. They still want some degrees in an area because it helps show some base knowledge and things like that. But at the end of the day, if they get somebody in for the interview for a position who has way more years experience or knowledge and skills and is being innovative and has that emotional intelligence to work with people, they're going to take them over somebody who has a fancier degree. Like that is a reality. There's other places that may not be like that, but in general, I think that I feel safe saying that because I do think that's a direction that's moving, and higher ed needs to figure out what they're going to do. And I'll tell you what, I don't think it's going to be higher ed just coming out with more micro credentials. Like they're already doing that in corporate, and corporate's not loving it either. Like micro credentials are already starting to fall as like a thing to look for. Because that's a wild west and it can be anything. And that's speaking as people like we've done credentialing and things like that. Like I have credentials.
It's almost like it died like the MOOC,
Yeah. Oh, the MOOC.
Open online.
Yeah. I don't even remember what it stands for anymore. It's just when I say MOOC, I think like Jabba the Hutt. I don't know. Whenever I say MOOC, I've always imagined like Jabba the Hutt. Like not great.
Gross, large, mean.
Yeah, kind of gross, large, and mean. I don't know. Anyway, that's Will and I's perspective. In general, it sounds like both Will and I, while we disagree on some of the points, I think we would both safely say I do think higher ed in some form or fashion is dying. And I think we're going to see a change. Yeah. And I hope it's for the positive. I will say I think there's a lot of stuff in higher ed I don't want to see lost, like the humanities stuff we're talking about. Like there's a lot of stuff where our world does need more critical thinkers. Like we get overly focused on skills, and we should be focused on skills, but we also need people who can think and evaluate. It's not all just about skills. It's about critical thinking and careful thinking. Like our world needs more of that. So I'm hoping we see a change that changes higher ed, but for the better towards something like that. Anyway, that became a more hot topic than we intended.
We should probably get into researching that a little bit.
We should
really help us.
We should hop in to researching that topic a bit.
I should give you a carrot for that one.
Yeah, kind of like a rabbit.
Yep,
Anyway, boom, transition hit ya. You didn't even know.
We're coming out of the dark, folks.
Yeah, they're just having fun. I don't know what they're talking about. Are they doing a transition? The correct answer is yes, we were doing a transition.
Yeah,
transition. Exactly. Anyway, the app we were talking about today is called Research Rabbit. We've talked about this app technically before for a brief period of time.
It's a fact.
Our one of our returning guests, the Harbinator, Justin Harbin. We've literally never called him the
Harbinator.
Dr. Harbinator. How have we not done that before?
I hope you're laughing in your car right now, my friend.
Yeah, I hope
He listens.
That's
many
saying that
weeks.
he still listens to us. No, I'm just he did just tell me he was listening to podcasts on like double speed. So maybe he's listening to this on double speed now. Anyway, Justin had talked about this app briefly on episode 92. Why to do ungrading. See, we were killing time while I searched the episode in our database on my screen.
Golf clap.
Anyway, he talked about this briefly. We didn't get into it in a ton because he had just discovered it. I'm not gonna take credit for this. Justin's the one who shared it with me. It's an AI-based app. It's you can go to researchrabbitapp.com, I believe is the URL if I'm looking correctly. I feel like I lied. That doesn't feel right. Did the URL change when I went to the real one?
I feel like it's got AI at the end.
Is it AI?
It's researchrabbit.ai. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the URL changes when you log in. So there's a fun thing.
Oh, okay.
It's .com when you're logged in.
Researchrabbitapp.com is the app version.
Because I'm logged in on my screen right now. That's why I was curious. Anyway, okay. So Research Rabbit basically at its when Justin talked about this in episode 92, the thing he focused on was like lit reviews, when you're basically like looking for literature in a topic. I mean, that's really what Research Rabbit's about. So Research Rabbit is basically an AI-driven tool that you can put in academic papers. It connects to a tool called Zotero. And you can basically put in topics, papers, and find other resources and connections to that topic and paper. Right. So basically what happens is, like, we were testing this with something Will worked on, and dropped in the paper. It found a similar paper. It has access to a handful of databases. But then you pull in that paper, and then it asks you basically, like, do you want to find earlier works by that person, or works on that topic that were done earlier, or later work, more by the authors of this paper, or do you want to look at suggested authors? But really, I think its power is it gives you an option to basically go, do you want to see similar works? Right. And when you do that, it basically opens up this fancy...
Which anyone who's done research knows is the worst part of finding other research is like manually hunting it down.
Yes, like trying to Google search things, or asking now in this day and age, ChatGPT, can you find me other sources? And ChatGPT responds back with
make stuff up.
Make stuff up. It also can't get like behind paywalls and stuff. That's a big thing with even AI still right now is the struggle to get behind paywalls. This specifically can go through academic resources and look throughout the internet to find that information. And what I like about it is it creates kind of an interconnected mind map, if you will. So like when I looked up Will's research, it basically gave me the original article in this little green circle and then made connections to a whole bunch of other articles or other papers. And those papers connected then to other papers that were on those topics. And so it finds a ton of resources. Like when I
all you had to do was put in the title, right?
Yeah, all I had to do was put in the title and find the paper. And when I did it, it also, even in the initial search, found other papers similar to it, and I could select all of those papers as kind of my base resources, and then have it search off of those base resources.
Dang.
What I found very interesting was just like the amount that it finds. Like, so like when I looked, just even on that one topic, Will, we looked at, it found 50 different papers across different places. And like I could click on them, it had like the author's name, and it would show me linked content. And then here's the cool thing. So when I click on one of the authors from the suggestions from the original paper, Will, it then tells me, do you want to see other suggested authors or more by these authors? Right. So one of the options I clicked on gave me 170 other options by that person alone. So like, and then like, here's the another one gives me these authors plus similar works. And I get 574 options for that other person's similar works. That's too many. That's a lot of options, right? But sorry, I'm trying to get back to the one person I was clicking on that gave me 170 for them. Because there's something cool that happened when I clicked on that person. Here we go. I think I got the right person. So if I get that, but like these authors, and I click on that these authors option, like the 170, it then gives me another map for that set of authors. So here's what it's doing, right? Essentially, the AI is finding in your initial search, right? It's finding every like one by those authors plus any connected papers that are connected to that original academic paper or that original academic content, right? And so it's finding all those connections for you. So you can click on them and look at those articles. But then say I go and it's doing it kind of by like a topic train of thought or author. And like, so if I click on that author and I start to find more interesting things by that person, it can say, okay, well, I want to keep going down this thought train, this research train, essentially. Right. And that's what I'm basically doing. I'm clicking down these interconnected maps to get to more resources in a certain area. And so while it's a lot of, like your comment, well, it's a lot of resources. When you're doing in-depth research, though, like dissertation level research or like book level research on a topic, it's a pain right now to do that on the internet. Like it's difficult doing that. And there's a lot of tools we've tried to solve that problem. But what's really cool about Research Rabbit is it's doing a lot of the legwork for you. And one thing that was impressive, like I haven't used this in an actual research situation yet, but Justin was commenting. He commented on this in our episode 92, where he talked about this. But since then, I've talked to Justin a lot more about this, and he's commented on, like, he's put in lit reviews he's done before this tool existed, and it found most of the stuff he found on his own plus more.
Dang.
Like, so like it's a more comprehensive tool. And what's really cool is you can go in here then and create separate collections. So like, even if you don't want to use this for research, but you just want to dig into topics, like you wanted to get in to, get more knowledgeable about a certain topic, Research Rabbit is a tool that you could use to do that. And you can create separate collections for it. So you can have topic threads and things that you're going down and save them. And then they're all exportable too for dissertation level for like specific, the different export types, like what is it, BibX or something, and there's a couple. I'm talking about. Like there's that's not my area as much. So because Will and I stopped at the master's level, but we know,
thankfully,
we know what that is. Like we've seen.
We like ourselves
education
too much.
Yeah, so it's really cool. I think it's a really powerful tool. It's a good use of AI. They're using AI to do this, and I think it's something that could definitely help cut down time for research. Anything from dissertation level stuff to prepping for papers, topics, writing books. If you're just in an academic environment and you're doing research in a specific area or whatever you want, this could be a really powerful tool for doing that.
All for free. It is not a
currently right now. Research Rabbit is completely free
for now. Hopefully forever. Maybe.
I would assume we've been in education long enough to be skeptical of
somebody
that.
will eventually want money, but
hashtag Flipgrid. Well, I guess Flipgrid stayed free all the time. It just it went the other way. It just went to Microsoft. I don't know. I'm trying to think off the top of my head now tools that have done that, but we know that's a common thing in higher ed. All of us know tools we've lost to the payment plan. The evil payment plan. But I will say, to their point, I think Justin commented on this as well. They have a mission. And right now, they're pretty intense about being free. Like, that's kind of their thing. Now, one that, rhymes with hypothesis. Also,
amazing.
Also was that way. And you now pay. But I think for now, it's a tool you can dig into, play around with, and could cut down a lot of time on the research side of things.
Start if you want to start a PhD, do it right now while Research Rabbit's free.
Before Research Rabbit becomes paid. So we'll see. They're really early. They're a newer tool, so I think you'll see them stay free for a while. Honestly, the tools, it's just really cool how the whole system works. Just what you can find, how you connect. It's clearly built with research in mind and connecting ideas and thoughts without having to do a bunch of Google search pages and saving them. Even in our great tools like Mendeley and Zotero that does this, and I use Notion for documenting everything. Even those things doesn't do stuff like this. It doesn't find these quick connections for you, and honestly, cut out some of the legwork that just wastes time. Like it gets you right into digging into the resources as opposed to just spending hours looking. Like it starts to get you that information quickly. So that's, I think, pretty cool.
It puts your time of effort on the right things. Actually reading the content, dealing with the content.
Exactly.
And writing. That's where you want to be spending your time, not doing the searching.
Anyway, so jump on that like a rabbit. That was a bad joke. I don't need to do that anymore. Yep. Yeah, see that I entered that joke and just felt like it was going bad.
That's just one I think we should leave alone.
Anyway, with that horrible note, what's next? The end of the High Tech Podcast. That's what's next. No, I'm just
joking. Be no episode 102.
There will be no episode 102. No, episode 102 will be coming next week. Will and I are going to be roasting this is a roastery that we both love and hate this tool, but we're going to do a roasting. Yeah. We've talked about this tool. We're going to be roasting Articulate a little bit. We're going to focus on, we're going to go into the unhappy High Tech Podcast. We're going to go into the, we hope you listen to this Articulate and we hope you change these things, type of vibe. We've done this for past tools.
You're already great. Do better.
Yes, you're already great. Do better. And then we're also going to be introducing a new tool called Canopy. We are not roasting that one. I noticed when we say the episode in a certain order, it sounds like we're roasting both, or like we're roastery, Articulate, and Canopy. Nope, just one we're roasting for now, and then we'll be talking about Canopy next week as well. So, just a reminder: if you don't already follow us on Twitter at High Tech Podcast, or subscribe to us on YouTube at High Tech Podcast. So that works in both of those places. If you're watching the video, it's down right about here-ish.
I don't remember. I think it's over there.
I don't know. Yeah, it's over here. If you're not watching the video, you should start. All right, we're cool. You missed all of our lighting effects. If you were,
it's fine. You turn the episode off, then you're not here.
Yeah, who knows? So anyway, check us out there. If you want to reach us, you can also email us at inbox@hightechpod.us and check out our website, hightechpod.us. All episodes have information about each app we talk about. And so I definitely encourage you checking that out. There is content on those pages that is not in the episode. So if you're interested in something that we talk about as an app, like you want to get started with Research Rabbit, I will provide that information to you on our episode page. So check that out at hightechpod.us. Again, thank you everybody for joining us for another week as we continue to look what it looks like to harness technology in the classroom, whether online or in person, or not even in higher ed if it's not here anymore. We don't know. Thank you for joining us for another week on the High Tech Podcast. See ya.
See ya.